You're listening to the A Bit From Within podcast with Felicia Marty. I often come back to this saying or this kind of quote, two things can be true at the same time, almost as like this little mantra inside of me, especially when I'm feeling angry and sad and depressed and frustrated and down. And in general, I'm feeling a little bit more hopeful than I felt a couple months ago. Hello, and thank you so much for joining me today for a new episode of the A Bit From Within podcast. My name is Felicia, and every week I come just to share a little bit from within. Usually it's something that I've either experienced or gone through, or sometimes we have other people on sharing their stories, all for us to just kind of relate to each other's takeaways. You know, I think there's something so incredible that happens just from sharing. And for me personally, this weekend has been such a big and huge reminder of that. I feel like for the past several months, I've kind of been in a little bit of a hermit shell. I think it definitely started while I was on vacation. I was on vacation from mid-December through mid-January. And mostly during that time, I feel like I just kind of crawled into my home and didn't resurface very much. And I really needed that time. But towards the end of this, the month of January, I just found myself becoming extremely emotional, like crying over things that should not make me cry. And I mean that in a genuine way. Like I am totally like it's okay to cry. I don't have any shame around that. But I was crying over like seeing like pizza advertisements on Facebook. And there's maybe more to that I'll explain. But I was just noticing myself kind of feeling very low, holding a lot in. And I just realized I just need some friends right now. I just need my friends. And so finally this weekend, I was actually able to make that happen because, you get to be older and you don't just go up to your friend's house, knock on their door and say like, hey, let's play. Instead, it's like, hey, when can you fit me in? Is next Thursday at 3 p.m. good? And then half the time you end up texting each other right before and being like, I'm so sorry, but can we reschedule because this happened or I can't. There's so much going on and eventually it happens. And I never mind a reschedule because I'm a firm believer that when things are supposed to happen, they do. I've noticed this in my photography business. Anytime we've ever had to reschedule a session, things are always better the second time around, for whether it's better weather or the outfit they really wanted to wear just got shipped in, or it just always works out for the best. And I feel like that's true with friends too. It's like one of my best friends that I was able to chat with this weekend, we haven't talked in so long, and we ended up spending like close to 5 hours on the phone, just finally catching up on each other's lives and like childhood stuff and recent stuff, and just, one of those really good heartfelt conversations. And I really, really needed that. And it feels like that kind of happens for me, that things kind of move in waves where it's like there's no connection for a little while, and then all of a sudden I get a lot of connection. And so like even just in the past, I feel like 48 hours, I feel like I've been doing nothing but connecting with women I love in my life. And it has just been good for my spirit. And I'm also feeling just a teensy bit tired right now. So if that comes across at all today, I am sorry, but I'm a human, and that's where I'm at right now. In fact, I'm recording this much later in the day than I normally do. Usually Mondays are the day that I kind of carve out for this, and I like to start recording mid to late morning. I've noticed that's kind of when I'm freshest, is like right pretty soon after my day gets going and I get into a flow. But today just kind of took a different turn. A little bit of flexibility was required, partially because I took a long walk this morning, and then once I got back, I couldn't quite make that transition from like activity to the mental work of sharing a bit from within. And then by the time I was settling into things, Dave was on a call with his job in the other room, and our walls are very thin, so then that wasn't going to work. So just kind of, I was really trying to practice being flexible today. Like, again, when I'm supposed to sit down and record, that is going to be when I need to share, and I'm going to be in the right place in the right time, and it's all going to be good. So before we really dive into today's topic, just a couple of things to be aware of. One of the things that I'm so excited to share is that this year on the podcast, I'm hoping to bring on some more guests. That was my intention last year. And then, of course, wedding season got very intense, and I didn't have the ability to bring people on during that time. And then I was just kind of playing mental catch up. But now I am so ready. And one of the things I did last week is I actually created a nomination form. So if you go to my website, abitfromwithin.com/links, like LINKS, you'll see it's the first one down. There's a nomination form. So if you have something that you've been through that you want to share about, whether it's becoming a parent or some kind of loss or a transition that's happened in your life, or just something that has impacted you that you have had major takeaways from, there are other people out there who would want to hear that. And so you can nominate yourself, or if there's somebody else that you want to nominate, somebody that you think has an awesome story or who would really vibe with this podcast. It's all about sharing what's going on with you, doing the best you can, improving your life, finding well-being, all of those things. Feel free to hop on there at any point and nominate yourself or somebody else. I've gotten already so many awesome people throwing their names out into the hat that I am so excited for what is going to be coming down the line. But that's the first thing I wanted to share. The second thing is that today, January 31st, the day I'm recording this, and then February 1st is the day that this airs, we are right in the middle of this new moon. It's finally time for the second lunar cycle of the year. Here we are, new moon in Aquarius, and I'm going to talk about it a little bit right now, but if you want to download my self-care guide, well, one, if you're a member of the Patreon, you get it delivered right to your inbox. In fact, all of our Patreon members have already received it, but you can download the guide for free as well on my website. It's something that I just decided, it's a huge passion project of mine. It's something that I'm very passionate about, and I want people to be able to use it if they want it. The self-care guide, it's about 10 pages, and it kind of gives some forethought information about this Aquarius new moon and the month ahead, and then has a new moon ritual and a full moon ritual, and just talks about some very basic astrology. As you guys know, I love astrology, but I'm not to the point where I could say I'm an astrologer. And I've been thinking about this a lot lately as I've been getting more clear about where I'm going in my business and what's important to me and what's important to me right now. And what I feel very passionately about is very beginning fundamental astrology. There are so many people out there who are starting to do high-level astrology who can tell you all about your life and where you're going with your birth chart. But for me, I'm much more curious about you working with the lunar cycles, especially within the zodiac, and then just knowing what's going on in your natal chart to the point that you can really be sure of the elements and how those influence you and how they can affect your self-care routines and what you expect out of yourself and others. So that is something that I feel very confident that you can rely on me for, is very introductory level and relatable astrology information. And what I love about that is that you don't have to be huge into astrology to relate to it or to benefit from hearing a take on any of the stuff in the self-care guide. Even though I do talk a lot about all of the symbols and everything, you can kind of just let it wash over you and just take it as themes, right? Themes that you can absolutely relate to in your own life. And then if you really do love astrology, it's right there for you to kind of dive deeper into and be inspired by as well. So I feel like it's a very, very relatable to a wide spectrum of people out there. So as we talk about what's happening right now, we've got this new moon in Aquarius coming. Just take a deep breath into that, because new moons are when the sky goes dark. Full moons are when we see that gorgeous round moon in the sky, but a new moon is when we can't see the moon because the moon is right in front of the sun. So all of the sun's light is on the moon's backside. And what that means is that in astrology is that the moon and the sun are on the same page. They're in the same sign, they're on the same page, they're on the same wavelength. And this is a really beautiful moment for setting intentions and for manifesting. Now, throughout the year, if you kind of follow this conversation, there's certain times where it's better to manifest than others. Like if we're in the middle of a solar eclipse, that's not necessarily the best time to manifest. There's certain things that kind of change that kind of say like green light, yellow light, that kind of thing. But this new moon is a beautiful, wonderful time to manifest. It's kind of like all situations go. And what's really cool is the new moon that happens between the end of January and the end of February in each year is what they call the Lunar New Year. And that is a term that actually comes from like a lot of Chinese traditions. So this is like the Chinese New Year. And there's this huge festival that happens at the start of the new year. And it goes all the way for 16 days until the full moon happens. So there's a ton of energy right now throughout the entire world around this Lunar New Year change. And I think there's something to this year, especially because for a lot of us, there was a ton of retrograde energy throughout January and getting into January. And for a lot of us, January felt slow and sluggish and heavy and like not the best energy to actually start something new. So if you felt that at all, here is a chance. If your energy is different, if you're ready to work on new goals, this is a wonderful time to set those goals. Now, I will say that Aquarius, the sign of Aquarius, is actually not towards the beginning of the zodiac. The astrological new year begins in a couple months from now. So we're going to go through Aquarius, through Pisces, and then when Aries begins, that's the beginning of the astrological new year. So Aquarius is actually the 11th out of 12 signs. So it's right near the end. And because of that, as we kind of move through the zodiac, we kind of move from being very kind of self-oriented to starting to be kind of other-oriented in terms of relationships and partnerships. And then we start to move towards the end of the zodiac when we really start caring a lot more about the collective and about what is happening on higher levels. Where is our place in the world? How are we part of this bigger collective story? And so there's something to that with this new year, if that makes sense to you, where you can not just think about the things that you personally want to manifest for yourself, but how do you fit into that bigger narrative, that bigger picture? What are some of your values that matter to you because of how it matters in the world? It would be a wonderful time to set intentions around that, or intentions around networking, intentions around social causes, working with people on a bigger, higher level where, maybe these aren't like your best friends that you're sitting and having a conversation with, although it definitely could be, but it could be also an organization that you volunteer for or a community that you're helping, where it's not like you're having these deep personal relationships with these people, but you're still making an impact. And these people are maybe making an impact on you as well. Now, the other thing that I will say about this new moon in Aquarius, like I said, Aquarius is the sign of, connections and socialization and where are we in this bigger picture. But it's not always an extroverted sign. And so there might be a feeling right now. I know I'm feeling this very intensely. So just kind of want to validate this energetically for any of you too, that it's okay to slow down. It's okay. I've always been a creative. So my whole life I was either into piano or art or theater or storytelling or writing or choir or any kind of art. So the process of being a storyteller or creating something is something I'm pretty familiar with. And for me, there's always this place at the beginning with a blank canvas where there's a quiet that comes in, where I don't necessarily have the entire vision together. I'm kind of waiting for it to reveal itself to me. And I think that there's something that you can prioritize there with this new moon. So you don't have to be, creating your huge vision board and starting to action your dream and your vision. But you can carve out quiet time to maybe just sit with a list or sit with a piece of paper that you just write a quick letter to yourself. Or maybe you don't even do that. Maybe this time it's just, you're just needing some space. So you throw your legs up the wall, you have your, back on the ground, and you just let yourself for 5 minutes just sit and just kind of wonder. I wonder what life would be like if I put more energy into this. I wonder what life would be like if I put more energy into that. Where is my heart being pulled right now? What feels important to me right now? And maybe it's just that carving out time to sit with what could be possible for you or what your heart is saying. That this is the perfect time for that. Now, I do have in that guide that you can get from my website, if you just look for the Lunar Guide or the Self-Care Guide, or those of you on the Patreon, just open up the guide and look for the full moon ritual. Did I just say full moon ritual? I definitely meant new moon ritual. And I think I really like it's called a manifestation ritual. And what I'm a really big believer of, I'm just going to go off on a tangent on this too, is that your ritual can be as short or as long as you need. So it's like I just mentioned, what I just said would be very short rituals. And the ritual it can be formal, it could be casual, it could be 5 minutes, it could be 30 minutes. You can put as much or as little as you have the bandwidth to do. But the reason I like to call it a ritual is because it's you saying, this is a special moment that I'm carving out for myself. So I highly recommend that you carve out some special sacred time for you. We all have this tendency to neglect ourselves. And that is why this self-care practice that we're all kind of buzzing and talking about is so important. It's not because we all need to be bougie with ourselves. I mean, sure, there's plenty of space for that too. But really, I think where the need is in just taking care of ourselves. Oh, my heart almost hurts just saying that, because I know that there are so many of us out there who have neglected that dentist appointment, or we're sitting with something that we're really afraid of, but we just don't know how to action, or we're afraid that once we do action it, it's going to be so overwhelming and so much work that we don't have the time or space for it in our lives. This could be even simple stuff. Like, how many of us are sitting out there right now with laundry that is just overflowing because we can just barely keep up with it? Or with nothing left in our fridge, like no food at all. Like, that's honestly a place that we're in right now, because it feels like we're constantly having to go to the grocery store, but it can be so overwhelming sometimes to even just choose what to eat for dinner. So going to the grocery store, that is self-care. Or finding something to eat that is for us, because Dave's on this low histamine diet right now, it does have to be the grocery store. But for you, maybe it's, hey, tonight is that perfect night to get takeout, and this is going to help me get the energy I need so that I can carve out some more space tomorrow, right? I'm a really big advocate that the self-care practices that we do, whether it is kind of these basic things I'm talking about, or the more sacred moments where you're setting aside your intentions and you're really looking at your heart space and you're evaluating what you want in your life. And maybe you're doing a physical or spiritual practice around that. But the point of all of these is not simply to just enjoy doing them, which I hope that there's that element for you. I hope you love doing what you do. I wish that we could all move through 100% of our day loving every single thing that we put our energy into. But what's probably more realistic is that some of what we do helps create space for us to have an easier time tomorrow, or to have our needs met. So scheduling those appointments, or finding a good strategy around dinner, or making time to manifest things in this month ahead so that you can have a very clear picture and actually make some progress. These are things that are going to help keep you focused, that are going to help create your life to be better tomorrow than it is today. And that is what I believe a big part of self-care is about. It's about caring for yourself. Okay, well, thank you for sticking with me through all of that. I felt like it kind of took a bunch of twists and turns as I was moving through that first part of today's episode. And I was kind of split over what I really want to talk about with you today. But I think I've settled into this thing that I know to be true, that I come back to a lot. And it's that two things can be true at the same time. So what I'm feeling right now is like two things can be true at the same time. This can be a great episode, and I can be a little all over the place. Those two things can be true at the same time. I often come back to this saying or this kind of quote, two things can be true at the same time, almost as like this little mantra inside of me, especially when I'm feeling angry and sad and depressed and frustrated and down. And in general, I'm feeling a little bit more hopeful than I felt a couple months ago. I'm feeling a little bit more excited than I felt a couple months ago, where I feel like things are about to change and I'm feeling some gratitude about that. Two things can be true at the same time. I really feel like a lot of us need to hear that right now, because in a lot of my recent conversations, there's threads and patterns of self-doubt that are continuing to come up, where sometimes we question ourselves because we are not how we thought we should be. And then there's this other side of ourselves that's really proud of ourselves for being where we are, because we're genuinely doing the best that we can. And then we go right back to that thing where we're judging ourselves because, well, I should be doing this, or I should be this kind of a parent, or I should be bringing in this much money to the house in this kind of way. And when we're not doing those things, we're judging ourselves really hard. And I think that's where, this kind of mantra can come in handy, is in those times when we're judging ourselves. Because it's not always, oh, I'm a good mom and I'm a bad mom, or I'm a good partner and I'm a bad partner. But more so, it can be true like, hey, I thought for a long time I needed to be this. And that is true. And that's something I feel guilt about. And I'm really proud of the person I've become because I move through the world like this. And these are my values. And maybe it really just comes back to finding balance, because a lot of the examples that I'm thinking of are examples where people feel like things have to be black or white. And I mean, I fall into that all the time, although I really, really prioritize trying to come back to a place of balance. I actually think I can kind of thank my dad for that, because, he's always taught me that, Felicia, you have to have balance. Felicia, you have to have balance. But I think that's where some of our resentments and things can come from too, is when we try to put ourselves into a hole, or we try to say we can only feel these ways, or when I think of this one feeling, it is the only thing that matters. And the truth is that most of life is not black and white. Yeah, there are things that sit in those pockets, and we are allowed to feel intensely when we're in those places. But in my experience, we fall into a gray area more often than not. And we land where we land not because it is the only truth, but it is the one that resonates with us most from the life we're living at the current time that we're choosing it. And a lot of the things that I'm thinking of are these big examples that I don't want to share as examples because they're people close to me. It's their truth. It's their story. But here's a kind of silly take on that I think kind of demonstrates what I'm talking about on a less intense level. So a couple months back, as Dave and I have been kind of dealing with a lot of his health stuff, and especially in the fall, we were wrapping up all of these weddings, and he was in charge of all things video for my business. But while he's been really, really sick, he was not able to do it. He shot all of the weddings that he could, except for the one that we had to travel for. And it ended up coming down to me being the editor for everything. And I'm glad I was able to do it because I actually really, really enjoy it. But there was a time where it was really affecting our relationship because I was needing him to hold up his end of the bargain. I was putting these very, very intense expectations on him, and we were having trouble kind of moving past what should have been and versus what is. Like, because the truth is that he had zero capacity from a physical, emotional, and mental standpoint. He had nothing to give. And not only did he have nothing to give his, work in my business, but he had nothing to give for me in our relationship. Like that, what he was able to give was going completely towards us in our relationship. And so the reason I share this is because during this time, he decided to move his desk downstairs. Because up until that point, right before the pandemic started, we bought a 2-bedroom house, and he had a job somewhere else outside of the home. And then boom, he was at home all the time. And we are in a very tight area. Now, do we have more space than some people who are living together in, 400 square foot apartments, 500 square foot apartments? Yes. And I am very grateful for that. I know I have a lot to be thankful for. And it's also true that he and I need more space. We need our own areas. And it is very hard to share an office with somebody when you both are very intense people and you like your space and you like how you work and you work differently. That is true too. We are very different. And so when he moved downstairs, it was a really nice separation. Because, like many of you guys out there, we're going on almost 2 years of being stuck in this house together, spending a ton of time together. And I'm so proud that we've made it through, and we really have become closer and better off for it. It doesn't mean this goes into what I'm saying. It's like two things can be true at the same time. Like, that is so true. We love each other. We've grown our relationship so much, and it has been so hard, and we could use with some space. So when he moved his office downstairs, we kind of had this separation, and it was so nice. And then before you know it, slowly over time, I started editing more videos that had to happen on his workstation. Now I'm editing downstairs on his computer. And it was like my space that was upstairs just kind of ended up overflowing downstairs. And then we're constantly downstairs and back, with each other all the time. And I did love what was happening in my office. It was like this very sweet, kind of girly, cozy space that I enjoyed. And then Dave started a new job over in January that he's working 9 to 5, and he's working remotely, and he's having a lot of meetings. And we just started to realize, I'm like, okay, this isn't going to work out anymore, having his office downstairs. It's not working. It's a shared space. There's a lot going on. We're in and out of the house. I work from home. We have diverse schedules. We've got a lot of appointments going on. It was time for him to bring his stuff back upstairs. Now, how I feel like this relates to what I was saying before is the sense that when he moved his desk downstairs, that was the absolute best decision that he could have made at the time. Is it the only decision that we could have made? Is there other ways that we could have gone about dividing the space or creating different schedules to be in the office, or maybe trying to brave more deep conversations about what was happening for each of us psychologically? Any of those could be true. But for that moment, in that moment in time, the best thing that he could do was just move his desk and get some space that way. It's probably not the best example, but it's something that I've been thinking a lot about, because over the weekend when we moved him back upstairs, I kind of started to realize, I'm like, oh, okay, so this is for the best. And I know there's a lot of pros to the desks be in the office and the office being an office and us being up here. And at the same time, I'm a little sad to be losing some of my kind of sacred space in there. And I was also a little frustrated because my plan for the weekend was to rest. I wanted to put a ton of work. I had some work to do, of course, but it was a little bit on the shorter, slimmer side. And so I really wanted to intentionally rest. And instead, I feel like I got a little bit hijacked into re-strategizing all of the furniture situation in our house and all of the rooms. Because, the setup that we had before, it just didn't work. And he knew that, and I knew that. It was like, the room it's a tiny bedroom that's our office, and there's a window against one wall, and then across from the window is the main door and then a closet space. So you really only have two walls that you can put stuff up against, because you can't really put stuff up against the window wall, which again, I'm very glad that we got a house that has such a big window in that room, because I love all the natural light, but you literally can't put up anything up against that wall. And then you really can't put up anything against the wall on the right, because that's the wall the door is on, and it just turns into this very awkward kind of like dead end situation. It's not good feng shui, and you feel it. Like, it's just not good energetically. We don't want to run into a desk when you walk into a room. So that is something that I struggle with, because I like things to be functional, and I like to change things based on what does this need functionally. But a lot of those options get taken away when you only have one wall you can put stuff up against. So it led to me feeling like, okay, I've got to get this bookshelf out of here. And I was like, okay, then I'm going to just build the second huge kind of bookshelf, because we have this really tall vaulted wall. The ceiling is kind of vaulted in there. And so there's the wall that's the tallest. We've kind of painted it this beautiful blue color, and then it has like this huge row of my books on it, which I just love. And so I thought, okay, I'm just gonna go get another set of these shelves, and we're gonna just do a second huge row of books, and then I can get rid of the bookcase completely, and then that'll leave us some more spaciousness in here, which this room really needs, whether I like it or not. So I went and got these shelves, and I got them home, and I realized that they're not the right color. They don't match the other color. Like the other color is definitely more brown, and these were more gray. And so I almost thought about just doing it anyway, and then I really thought, like, no, I'm not going to do it if I can't do it right. It's an area that I've grown a little bit in my life, because old Felicia would have just been like, F it, I'm solving a problem. That's what needs to happen. But long story short, I felt hijacked because I'm solving this problem. I'm doing this bookshelf thing. I'm trying to make dinners. I'm trying to clean the house. I'm trying to do all these things that I kind of do when I get kicked into overdrive. And then I ended up having to move the bookcase into our bedroom, which actually is awesome. And it feels like this aha moment, like, why didn't we do that the entire time? And it's because we've been doing the best that we can. Because we moved into our house, and then a global pandemic started 6 months later. And we've been trying to get through a business where it has huge amounts of weddings that are happening. And we're on top of it, we started navigating a huge health crisis in one of us. And it's been really, really hard. And that is where we're at. And that's why we've made the decisions that we've made. And can I always see all of the best decisions that I could make while I'm going through this? No, I can't. So maybe I'm not making all the best decisions right now. That can be true. And without a shadow of a doubt, I know that I am living intentionally, that I'm opening my heart, that I'm putting myself out there, that I'm trying to become a better spouse, that I'm trying to be a better friend, that I'm trying to be a better lover of who I am, and actually care for myself and stop beating myself up all the time. That's also true. So, and I share all of that in this kind of silly, kind of not so big story, just for the sake that it's something that I hope that you can relate to, and that I'm pretty sure that you, listener, are also navigating some less than ideal circumstances, because so many of us are. Relationships are hard. Whether it's your spouse or your child or your parent or your sibling or your friend or your coworkers, relationships are hard. And they're especially hard when one of the people are going through a lot. And right now, all of us are going through a lot. So stuff is tough. And my heart just wants to go out as I'm saying all of this and just give everybody who's listening the biggest, longest, it's gonna be okay hug. Because I feel that energy right now. Even though I could cry with how hard things have been, I'm also feeling finally like there's a little light at the end of the tunnel. Now, I would not be surprised at all if I get to that light and it's just a hole in the tunnel above me and I still have longer in the tunnel to get through. But I'll take what I can get. I'll take that little bit of light and I'll just feel grateful. Feel grateful right now for what is going right today. For the little things that are working. For being able to sit down right now a little bit later in the day to record this, even though I would have preferred to do it earlier. But knowing that every little thing I needed to experience today led me to this moment to be able to share this message with you. So I think we will wrap it up there. Of course, I feel like there's so much more on this topic that maybe we'll have to do. This is the introduction to two things can be true at the same time. But at the same time, it's probably just as good to stand on its own exactly as it is. So let's do a card reading, shall we, to close today's episode. I've kind of grabbed the Affirmator's Love and Relationships deck. We're going to give a quick shuffle here and just see what the universe has to add to this conversation. Solidarity. So just to give you a little frame of reference, there's a picture of a woman mowing a lawn with a super cape on, and then kind of off in the background is a guy in a plaid shirt cutting the bushes. So it says, I respect the power of solidarity and look for opportunities to unleash it. When a loved one has something tough to do, I'll heed their often silent and sometimes loud and whiny call and participate in the toughness with them. Everything is easier when a partner, cohort, sidekick joins you. The only thing that's not easier is feeling resentment, which is, I suppose, the overall point. What I love about this is that it feels so on the nose for how I've felt with Dave lately. It's not always easy to be that sidekick, but in the long run, it is easier, and there's more love there, and there's less toughness because we're doing it together, even the unpleasant stuff. So I love that little message of solidarity to go with this idea that two things can be true at the same time. And I guess my hope would be that, as you open your heart up and you move through the world and we're all doing the best that we can, that if you are going to help somebody else, that we can hopefully do it without feeling resentful. Because that's the truth, is sometimes I can feel a little resentful when I have to help somebody else out. And yet at the same time, it can feel so resentful to know that you're alone and that nobody is there for you. In fact, that's a lot worse. Shoot, now I feel like I need to go just totally record a totally different podcast on this subject, because I guess I have a lot to say on this matter. But I'm going to put this out into the universe knowing that I did the best that I could today, that this message is worthwhile, it's worth sharing, that somebody out there resonated with it. So if that was you, always feel free to shoot me a message and just let me know that this resonated with you, that you got something from it. And if you really loved it, or you love the work that we're doing in general and you just want to help boost us up, please go leave a review on either Apple or Spotify or wherever you listen to your podcasts. And just know that that little 2-minute moment of your time of saying something really awesome that we're doing here and that you like about it is having so much of a payoff. And I am extremely grateful for it. So that will be it for today. And until next time.